Thank you for having me, Rana. It rather reflects, in actuality, Israel taking advantage of the aftermath of the 7th of October attacks, the Al-Aqsa flood, and the subsequent war in Gaza. This has created the conditions for Israel in order to implement long dormant plans of expansionism and land grabs. What we are seeing in Syria is a manifestation of such policies. They have taken advantage of the fall of the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, which created a huge power vacuum inside Syria, which basically has descended into a state of chaos at that point. And the Israeli army of occupation marched from the already occupying Golan Heights. The Golan Heights are Syrian territories occupied since 1967. So they marched into the buffer zone, occupying cities of Quneitra and Al-Ba'ath and many other cities. And they even extended their control to Jabal al-Sheikh, which is a very strategic mountain that overlooks Syria, Lebanon, and Israel, giving them a huge strategic advantage. And also they even entered the Damascus countryside, and now Israeli forces stand about 25 kilometers away from the Syrian capital. So that tells us what the Israelis are trying to do. They are trying to expand their territories further, and now they are even expanding settlements inside the already occupied Golan Heights. The Israelis have annexed the Golan Heights in the 1980s. The United States, under the first Trump administration, recognized Israel's annexation of the illegal annexation, rather, of the Syrian Golan Heights, and now they are expanding into more lands. They have captured around 1,000 square kilometers of land inside Syria. So my fear is that if they plan to annex the more Syrian land that they have occupied, that the United States would move forward with recognizing it, thus legitimizing the Israeli presence in these areas, at least in American eyes, and making their occupation of Syrian territories permanent. This is what the Israelis are doing in Syria.
Dr. Osman, do you agree or disagree with the idea or the what is said or the narrative that Israel is already doing this or is expansioning or it's making expansion plans in the Golan Heights and annexation in the Golan Heights, and the international community is overlooking and watching without doing anything? Do you agree or disagree, sir?
I would agree that the international community is not doing anything because they cannot do anything. They do condemn such moves. The United Nations, many European countries, many countries around the world condemn the Israeli actions. However, the United States provide them with political cover and immunity, basically, and impunity from any accountability. So they can violate international law and the UN Charter by taking away the lands of other UN member states and basically annexing them in violation of international law, and they can get away with it because the United States says that they can get away with it. The only way to punish Israel per international law is through imposing sanctions, for example, by the UN Security Council. However, the US veto always stands in the way, and no European country or Western country would dare to take any unilateral move to sanction Israel, because then they will bring upon themselves the wrath of the United States. So unfortunately, no one can do anything as long as Israel enjoys unconditional and unlimited US support.
Okay, General Khalid, what are the implications of increased military operations in southern Lebanon for the fragile ceasefire and civilian safety, sir? And do you read it as a fragile ceasefire, sir?
Good afternoon. No doubt that all the procedures taken since the signing of the ceasefire agreement and starting implementing it are very vague and uncertain. and we can say that there is a random ceasefire, but I think this description even is not enough. Since the signing of this agreement, there has been no efforts exerted by the committee, at least any announced efforts that might place a roadmap and a time frame to how to implement this ceasefire agreement, meaning how to organize the Israeli withdrawal in accordance with the 60-day term that has been spent, and Israel is still on Lebanese territories, and also how can we deploy the Lebanese army and the rules of engagement during the withdrawal of the Israeli army. All of this has not been taken into consideration, or it was vague or unclear. We see these fragmented Israeli withdrawal and the deployment of the Lebanese army on a random basis without any clear announced procedures that can be told to the public about the Hezbollah infrastructure that is being seized or destroyed by the Lebanese army. The matter today for the international community looks like a military or an army is withdrawing and another one is taking place, but it's not like that. It is seizing the infrastructure of Hezbollah by the Lebanese army and presenting the Lebanese army as an alternative to this militia, to this Iranian militia that has been deployed in southern Lebanon. So the Lebanese army is not the UNIFIL. It's not assigned to implement security measures on a plot of land. It is a party to this agreement and will be assigned to the responsibility of securing the borders and preventing the Israeli army from taking over the land and preventing Hezbollah from building new infrastructure. After all of the uncertainty we have talked about, we saw the extension of the Israeli presence in southern Lebanon.
Yes, sir. Very true. I'll be back. I'll leave it there and I'll be back again. Dr. Osman, what does the approval of Israel's recent draft law signify for the future of the West Bank, sir?
Well, it signifies a very bleak future for the West Bank.
I beg your pardon, a very?
Bleak future for the West Bank. A future that begets pessimism, in all honesty. Why? Because it basically removes any constraints on the illegally acquiring Palestinian lands in the West Bank. Israel has already expanded over the past few years illegal settlement building inside the West Bank exponentially. About 600,000 to 700,000 Israeli settlers now are living in settlements, in illegal settlements inside the West Bank. And they are supported by the Israeli military, which offers protection to these illegal settlements and establishes military structures and barriers and barricades around them, basically rendering normal life in the West Bank impossible for the Palestinians, and also rendering the idea of establishing a cohesive Palestinian state in the West Bank a pure impossibility. So this
is besides the displacements that are taking place. This is beside, of course, the statements by Donald Trump, the U.S. president, that Israelis should be displaced, which is stretching more space for the Israelis in the Gaza Strip and in, of course, the Palestinian land to move on to Lebanon, to Egypt and to Jordan, sir. So there's a lot going on.
Of course there is. As you just said, it's all a coordinated plan. It started way beyond Donald Trump. However, Donald Trump now is emboldening the Israeli side and openly supporting their approach to liquidating the Palestinian cause. And one of the key instruments to liquidate the Palestinian cause is the expansion of settlements and moving more Israelis into the lands, the occupied lands of Palestine that are recognized by the international community as Palestinian lands, as lands of the state of Palestine, which is recognized by 140 states all around the world and enjoys an observer status at the United Nations and is an actual member of numerous UN specialized agencies, the Arab League, the International Criminal Court, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So Palestine is an internationally recognized state. However, that never prevents Israel from annexing or moving, de facto annexing lands by building settlements. So it's very dangerous. And also speaking of Trump, when
Sir,
Trump
you say it's very dangerous. Are you worried about it?
Of course I am, and I was just going to tell you that Trump lifted sanctions that were imposed by the Biden administration on several illegal settlers or leading members of settler movements in the West Bank. Trump removed these sanctions, which means that now they are even further emboldened and they can move more freely now, free of any constraints or any sort of deterrence in order to carry out more settlement building. I'm very worried about this trend. And if they wish to destroy the Palestinian cause and basically gut it inside out, and this is what they are trying to do right now. And unfortunately, so far, they are being successful, and the only thing that is preventing them from displacing the Palestinians beyond their lands is the stern stance of the Arab Republic of Egypt and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan.
General Khalid, in what ways could increased Israeli settlements in occupied territories lead to further displacement of Palestinian populations, sir? Okay. Sir, in what ways could increased Israeli settlements in occupied territories lead to further displacement of Palestinian populations, sir?
If we mean by that the policy of settlement and increasing settlements in the West Bank, we can say that the military operations that seem to be that are not going to stop in the West Bank has targeted the important towns and villages in the West Bank and the residential complexes that are civil with an economic and investment potential. Let's remember why these operations were intensified on Tulkarm, Nablus, and Jenin, and as well as Ramallah. All of these cities have a symbolic significance in the Palestinian economy and the forms of demographic distribution of Palestinians. All of the operations waged on these regions will lead to more displacement of Palestinians. We're not talking about agricultural lands, we're talking about residential complexes with the role of the Palestinian social stability and economy. These attacks on these cities will lead to the displacement of a number of Palestinians or some kind of transfer inside the West Bank and probably outside later on, which will add to the settlement policy that has never stopped, leading to more drivers that would lead the Palestinians to leave their lands. If we add that to what has been stated by President Trump, inviting Egypt and Jordan to receive Palestinians from Gaza, as he said, Gaza is now uninhabitable. That means that Gaza will be a new location for Israeli settlements. This is a kind of killing or gradually killing the Palestinian cause and ending the settlement potential by setting impossible conditions to end the Palestinian cause, at least from the point of view of the United States. So far, the Arab position evident in the Cairo meeting, which came up with a clear Arab position rejecting displacement and insisting on the two-state solution and the international resolutions. This produced some kind of confrontation. We do not know what it's going to lead to, but it's an Arab confrontation holding on to the Palestinian rights to the two-state solution, and it's placing the development of the relations between Israel and the Arab world in exchange for the two-state solution. And despite of that, Israel is insisting on the settlement policy, and the US is fixed on killing the Palestinian cause. And we also cannot miss or ignore the resilience of Palestinian people, as the Palestinians are still the power that cannot be kicked out of Gaza despite of the cruel military operations and attacks. And I think the PLO to position that the situation will or can change to altercations and military engagement in the West Bank, but it will not lead to solving or the Palestinian cause.
Mr. Osman, how does Netanyahu's alignment with Trump influence Israel's military operations and settlement policies in the West Bank and Gaza? And sir, of course, I need your take on US President Donald Trump's invitation to Egypt and Jordan at this point specifically.
Well, at this point, it's not a secret that Trump provides apparently very wholehearted support for Israel as a country, and in particular to the government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And it seems that he is very enthusiastic in supporting the policies of this government, or at least most of them from what we see.
The Israeli government, sir.
Yes, the current Israeli government, they enjoy unconditional support from the Trump administration, it seems, and it seems that Trump endorses at least most of the sinister objectives of this government, which includes clearly the liquidation of the Palestinian cause, because when Mr. Trump would come and brazenly propose that the Palestinians should be relocated or forcefully displaced, ethnically cleansed out of their lands in Gaza and even the West Bank into Egypt and Jordan, this genocidal proposition completely aligns and echoes the core goals, the core objectives of the Israeli far right, who are a part of this governing coalition. And of course, Netanyahu, being the political animal that he is, the pragmatic that he is, he also, of course, endorses these objectives in order to cater to the needs and the sentiments of the Israeli religious and nationalist far right. So now we see Trump supporting them openly. I do not know whether this trend will continue.
Okay.
It will be revealed by Netanyahu's visit, the upcoming visit to Washington.
Dr. Osman, you did not answer my question. Your take, sir, on Trump's invitation to Egypt and Jordan in light of the refusal when he asked the Palestinians to be displaced to Egypt and Jordan, and of course the answer of Egypt by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was a real strong message to Donald Trump.
Okay, so of course Egypt invited President Trump to come over in an effort, I believe, to explain to him more thoroughly the Egyptian position on this, and to explain to the US president that the Egypt position is unchangeable, will never be subject to change, that we will never give concessions in this regards, because for two main reasons. Because first of all, this stems from our historical, moral, and political commitment to supporting the Palestinian cause, and this is something that has been going on for over 80 years. And also, it stems from our commitment to our own national security. Egypt will never jeopardize its own national security in order to please a US president or the Israeli government. This will never happen. So I think he has to understand what is at stake, and that such a course of action might be very detrimental to the strategic, historic partnership and relationship between Egypt and the United States.